I told you to be quick. This was a little bit harder to do than we thought just because it got stuck, but this thing is absolutely roasted. Again, we're not really looking at that. The frame is going to get swapped out here, but tank is done. This thing is so thin, it feels like paper on the top of it. The hangers, the skid, so, and we probably assumed all that. Look at, I took a picture of this. This actually, before we got anywhere, just perfectly broke itself right off. So I never drove this thing before it came in. I assume it ran, but it couldn't have been run very good with some of the stuff on this. So again, not the worst I've ever seen. I mean, usually these things, when they eventually just completely go, they just start cracking. And if it was cleaned off, there might be some cracks in it. But good news is though, Mr. Skills over here got your lines now. Again, we'll see. We'll try to use those because they're kind of hard to find. Or you can have them made, but stuff like that adds up. So as long as we can get the front ones here off, and if we can save those, then we will. But I have a feeling somewhere along the lines, those are probably pretty rusty back here. Even if we could save them, it's hard to say how long you'd actually get out of those. You can see how many layers have lost on the outer sheets of that stuff. So probably we'll replace that stuff. But again, it kind of depends if we can break it free from here. Normally our trick is if we're knowing we're going to replace these, we just cut them and then we put a 6-point socket on them with a little impact and it will bring them right out and we can just reuse the top line. So that's kind of where we'll go with that. Gearbox is likely going to have to be replaced because it's stuck to the frame right now. Again, we'll see if we can get it off, and if it's worth saving, we will. But you do have the bracketry and all this stuff. This is aluminum, well, steel, and then aluminum inners, so that should be fine to reuse. It doesn't look like the pump itself is in too bad a shape either. So, and then of course, fuel line. This is, a lot of this was stainless, so it might be okay. Yeah, these are probably just steel lines. They're pretty corroded back here. But again, some of that might even be some I don't have. So if we have to reuse some, we will, but I don't want you to have to face hunting a leak down later because you get pinholes and stuff like this. So we'll look and see what we got out here for if we can rob one of those off of something. You don't have to worry about your leaf spring because we got the kit coming in. That should be here, like I said, tomorrow, or at least half of it. The diffs, I mean, they're as good as they can be. There's a little bit of corrosion on them, but I think the big thing, and we don't really know this, even though we know it looks good in there, what we don't know is how bad the inside of this thing is, and it might be shot. If it's shot and it has to be taken apart, it depends if it wants to come apart. This is factory 2-piece axle, and they're kind of the weak link in these AMC 20s, but unfortunately they don't play very nice when they're rusty. To try to separate out those pieces to rebuild or replace parts, they usually end up ruining the backing plates. There's a way to do it, but it's still a way that doesn't always work. So if we don't have to mess with that and you guys are willing to do that out there, then so be it. We'll just leave that stuff alone. And just you'll have to know that it's not really roadworthy until somebody goes through the brakes on them. Because you're probably, my guess is that you pop drums on this, you're probably going to find some pretty gnarly things that kind of look like the rest of this guy. But who knows, maybe you've been in there. So just something to keep in mind on it. We'll make notes of that in our system. The front though, I did notice the rotors are toast. We knew, we kind of probably figured that. So that's probably something we should do. These dust shields aren't very pretty, but they're solid. I'd be afraid to sandblast these because I probably wouldn't have much left, but I would say because these are hard to get, they're usually pretty beat up even when we get them. We just keep those what they are. If you want to pay to have us clean them up just with like a wire wheel, we can try to do it, some non-abrasive, and then put something to kind of coat them. But this kind of stuff, it kind of adds up, and a mechanic later on can always go back in and service this stuff. So if you don't mind not messing with brakes, we won't. Again, it kind of just depends. If you want us to do it, we're more than happy to. It just takes a little longer, costs a little bit more. So, and we haven't popped this diff cover, but we assume it's good because the rear looked really good inside. So the 30s usually are pretty strong axles. It's just the outer parts that typically rust and wear out on them. So same with the hubs and stuff. We won't really know anything on there until it comes open, and there's no reason for us to do that unless it's something you're wanting. So, all right, so that basically covers this guy. Let's just give everybody, Jeremy here, Jeeps Limited Parts Breakers.com, 303-666-9020. If you're looking to do a CJ7 or have a CJ7 you want to restore, this is actually pretty moderately rusty. This isn't as bad as I've seen, so you might be dealing with something completely worse, and it would be my suggestion if you are, just to grab a frame. Whether from us, we've been selling them for over 20 years. or somebody else, but make sure you get a nice clean frame. Make sure they give you a video on it, something we do on it, so you can see it as if you're sitting in your person, because obviously it's probably going to get something shipped unless you're shipping us your Jeep. So, okay. And then suspension parts, just know you'll probably be wanting to do those. These are pretty worn out and super rusty. Be kind of ugly to put this back on. Sometimes you can save your axles. You'll have to look. These AMC 20s, they're already kind of pencil thin tubes on them. So something to look for if you're like what Brandon had earlier, that little scraper, just run it through. If it looks like you're losing lots of scaling, lots of stuff coming off the tubes, you're probably going to have even a thinner, and that one probably needs to be replaced. But otherwise, if it's like this, you can probably reuse those. Just kind of clean them up. Just know that the hardware is a pain in the ass on them, especially if it's not been converted. So they did make a conversion kit. For those of you who don't know or do know, they're really hard to get on narrow tracks. I just looked the other day, and I believe this one might still be offered, which is a quadra-track. It's got an offset rear end. This 20 sits off to the passenger side a little bit, more so than a centered one. And I believe when I was looking for another customer on a narrow track, I think I seen the kit on this one. So this can be converted, but just know going into a rusty axle like this, you're almost asking for issues when it comes to pulling the existing axle shaft and separating the bearings out from these backing plates. And typically that's when people call us and say, hey, I need a backing plate, because they've tried to do it and they've messed them up. They're not easy to get backing plates on. Sometimes I've had it to where people can't find them. They have to buy a whole axle just to get that piece off of them, because nobody sells just a backing plate. So it's a bad axle, and if it's a bad axle, it's typically got bad backing plates. So, okay, that's it for that guy. Let me give you a little bit of a tour now. This is the tub. Obviously, the tub is absolutely roach. It's worse than I thought. This when it came in, I thought, oh, this is not that bad of a Jeep. Well, pretty bad. So I can't really show you too much underneath of it. That looks pretty good. This back boxed area, absolutely thrashed. So, and you can see most of the bolts did break on it, which is actually a good thing, because we only had to cut a little bit, get out the torch a little bit on it, so not a lot of time in that stuff. Obviously the body, we kind of kept everything intact like this. We'll put the doors, if it sat out here for a while, we would just put the doors back on. That way the inside is protected and we're ready to transfer parts. We don't have to worry about the sun or the winter or whatever beating up on this stuff. So the doors, I know we talked a little bit about the top in the other video. The doors are okay. They're hard to find doors in general. So I would probably just tell you to run with these doors. I don't know if I have a cleaner set here. I might. If I do, I'll let you know. But really, there's only a couple areas that need to be fixed on them. Now, one of the areas is not an easy area to fix, so I'll give you forewarning about that. It's only on one side though. It's this piece here. So maybe a driver door, since you're gonna be painting it anyway. If we could find you just a nice solid driver door that doesn't have this. This is really difficult to get the lines right. It's real thin. A lot of guys, body shops, when they call me, they're replacing the whole door just because of this issue here, because it creates a severe weak spot in this framing of this whole area. And unfortunately, they didn't build that to come apart, even though that's how it was assembled. So, and then of course, there's quite a bit of, there's surface, that's not too bad, but there is some material lost here. So bolting this back on without a little bit of buildup back here, you might get a little bit of a weird angle that this might pitch out. It's hard to say until we get it back on, but surprisingly, those bolts came out. I was blown away by that. In 20 years, usually those are the ones that give you the fit. So to have those pull is pretty cool. Like I said, if you're okay keeping that stuff, a little bit of rust on the bottom lips of those, but not as bad as I've seen. Just like I said, that upper frame portion. And so we can try to find a door just to do the one, because the other one's not too bad there. All right, and then everything else we'll go to town and transfer if we can. Things like these hinges, theirs are probably chrome, maybe stainless, but they're nice looking. Unfortunately, they're not the best quality and they don't hold up all that well. If you want to go back to them, that's fine. If you want to reuse these, that's fine. I don't know if these will be savable, because typically these stupid Allen heads, the torques are bad enough, but then they put these Allens on them, and usually you can't get them off. You have to cut them, and then by the time you got a grinder in there or even a drill, it's marred up the chrome so bad that it's not even worth it. And they're cheap enough just to buy. I'm not a huge fan of these. They're not super heavy duty for as heavy as these doors are. You will be replacing these kind of hinges unless you go with some really quality stainless ones. So if it was me, I'd probably ditch those and either pick up a real nice set, or we can try to look for them. Otherwise, just go back to factory if you can find those. Again, are hard, but okay. And windshield frame we talked about. I need to find you one of those. That's about the only thing I know of for sure I don't have. Little stuff like these heater hoses. You probably already know what I'm gonna say. It's wearable. No point in saving some of this stuff, even if it doesn't look too bad. It's just silly to do. Might as well let us put in, you know, I don't know what heater hose is going for these days. It's usually by the foot, but I would just say let's not monkey around with that kind of stuff. He's able to save your brake lines. They're attached to the frame, so we looked out there. Some of these kind of brackets, probably gonna have to replace them. We'll see when we pull them, but they're probably not great. This one's not too bad, actually. That's your charcoal canister. This battery tray bracket, same thing. It might come out great, might look okay. Otherwise, we'll find you one of those. Steering column. It looks great on the inside. It might be okay. Hopefully it is, because these, I know I don't have this. So, oh, it leaked a little bit. I didn't know it dripped on me. Separating this, we're gonna have to look at these splines that are in here. If they look as bad as they look right now, and this does not want to come off, sometimes they rust weld themselves together. That happens. That's a rod. That inside rod goes all the way up in the column. That column is not easy to rebuild, and it's way more expensive than it is just to find one, although they're not easy to find. So we'll do our best and get some heat and see if we can separate this out and hopefully save the spline so you don't have, otherwise it ain't gonna grip on anything when it goes back on. And you can really see how bad it is right there. See how there's so much rust buildup. It literally just like welds itself, binds itself, I should say, to one another. So okay, but we'll get some penetrating oil, let that sit for a little while. And then again, you can tell me about, we can just go back to the way it was with manual brakes, or if you want to go ahead and do a power brake conversion. It doesn't change anything really. The proportioning valve stays the same. It might change out with a power steering one or a power brakes one, but I'm not 100% of that. I'll have to verify that. Otherwise, it's just this. There's not much else there to it. So something to consider. The harness looks decent. I mean, it's probably got a couple areas that were a little weird on it, like they all are, but Jerry's a phenomenal guy with these guys. So if it worked before, I'd say we leave it alone. I would do something different than stuff like this. We can put a little bit of money there and make it look a little bit cleaner. This is, I don't like seeing wire ties. This is a wire nut. This is not what you want on an automotive application. And don't feel bad, we see it all the time, but I just would get it out of there. And then these supports here, there's only one side. On the later ones they had two on both sides. These are trash. There's no way to save those. Matter of fact, that's already broken off there. So, and you can see through here. So, okay, just little things that you can look up. You can start, shopping. You're more than welcome to send stuff if you want. I don't care on the hoses and stuff. I will say that it's probably better just to go grab them from the local store and not try to save a couple bucks on this online, only because you'd be surprised at how many different inner dimensions, and that's really what matters on these. And if you send the wrong ones, we're just going to be buying them again anyway. So, and then of course cables, as far as your battery stuff goes, probably usable. I'm sure it worked fine. Not in the best shape. If we had a cleaner one of these, I'll let you know. Otherwise, it might be what you get until somebody puts an end on it. Putting ends on these is great, but unfortunately, once you do it the way that they build these factory, there is a good way to do it, but usually the factory ones are the best ways and look the cleanest. But this kind of stuff, we are where we are on a lot of it. So, okay. And then again, if there's something you think about as far as on the engine, the drivetrain, rear main, front main, since we have some of that stuff out, doesn't cost a lot to do it labor-wise, fairly inexpensive parts. I mean, we can go through it like we're doing another one right now, do a complete reseal, oil pump, timing set, paint the block. That does obviously add, not the paint, not so much, but just the overall breaking that down and doing everything on it. Or we can just throw it back in, and again, you guys can do it later. I'd say it's savings from that job. Would probably have to have the engine pulled to do most of the gasket if you're doing a full-blown gasket set like we do. Hey, when we go through them, do them everything, or we don't have to do the head. It's up to you. But just stuff to think about, okay? And I can get you quotes on some of that if you do want to do it, and if you don't, to us, you're not going to hurt our feelings because we've had it for a long time. I'd love to see this thing get delivered to you here fairly soon and be done with it and move on to the next one and start getting caught up out here as well. So, but at the same time, if you're, anyway, I'm just going in circles. Anyway, a little bit spazzy right now. I need some water. what am I, last thing I want to show you? The tub is out in the yard on my tub table, so I'm not going to go out there right now, but I do want to show. Now this frame is pretty good just as is. There's a couple things on it, and again, it kind of depends on what you want to do. Let's talk about what we will have to do, and then we'll go over, and I don't mean to have it, I just put it here today. It's kind of sitting on the hill, but I had to move it out of the way. I don't want to hit it. So, okay. It's a factory frame, and it looks to be a narrow track, and it's definitely a CJ7, so we are good there. Inner brackets from the back half forward are good, but there are a couple things, and we can knock them off, or you can keep them if you think you want to use them later. Those brackets there, okay, that middle one, those big long kind of wings, those aren't factory. My guess is they had some sort of supported step there. We can cut them off, and we can do it, you know, easily. Just whack them right off and let you guys clean them up later, or we can take a grinder and clean it up and touch it up with a little paint. Totally up to you guys what you want to do, but or we can leave them. They will stick out though. Those are probably going to come, I would imagine, all the way out. Maybe not so bad, but I would imagine those probably stick out a little ways outside the tub. Not a big deal there, fairly simple. Back is like the front is. It's got a welded on bumper. Okay, meaning those two bumpers, which are not factory, whether you want to keep them or not, may not be even a choice, because it's so integrated into this frame that, you know, if you like the look of it, great. It's got a 2-inch receiver on the front, and it looks like a 2-inch on the back, which is kind of cool. And if you don't like that look or want a different front bumper, I'm gonna have to get Jim involved. Again, not impossible, but they did a good, whoever did this did a great job on it, but they almost did too good of a job, because there's no way that's gonna come off easy without really getting into this existing frame. We can do it. It's just somebody made it to where it will not ever come off, or was never planning on it coming off. So if you're okay with the two bumpers, I would say, you know, and for my choice on this stuff, I mean, it really doesn't matter, but two bumpers are fine. The only thing I don't like about these two bumpers, they're really not that, they're not like a full-size two bumper. My guess is this was probably set up to wheel in this Jeep, the way this frame was set up, and they didn't stick out very far, which for a wheeler is, you don't want a whole bunch of crap sticking out. They probably set it up for those bars there for a tow behind, because you can flat tow these things so easily. Although be very careful flat towing a quadra-track like this one is. Okay, but and I haven't even began to look at your TKs. Those can be very problematic when rust gets in them, so I might have to we might have to get on that and see. I haven't even looked at the thing yet. But nonetheless, so the bumpers are what they are. You can't really add length to these the way they're designed. If you like them, great. If you don't, I'll get Jim over here and we'll figure out how to take them off without you know, making it look like Swiss cheese. Now the back one is the same way, and the back one maybe even more integrated than not. It's, you can see the lip. This is the original frame, kind of see down here, and then this added area. And the reason they do this, for those of you guys don't know, is you can see how thin this is. You can see on that one how bad it rotted. So that gives it some beefiness. And really, if you're going to be putting a 2-inch receiver on an old Jeep, you almost have to do this just to reinforce this stuff. So they did a good, like I said, they did definitely a good job. Doesn't look bad at all. And now with this one especially, but that one as well, not so much that one, this one definitely. This is one of those things that if you don't like it, you got to tell us now, because once this thing gets bolted down, pulling it off later, especially the way that this is kind of integrated in there with these bars, ain't gonna be easy. So just keep that in mind with it, okay? And then the inside of it's obviously been painted on the outside. The inside, I don't think anybody ever got in there. It's really hard to, so I don't blame them for that. It has a little bit of buildup. You can kind of see it down in there. It's obviously when you're in Chicago, you don't want something coming back like that, but I just want to give you a heads up. You know, it's pretty good though. I wouldn't be real finicky on that. Just know that, and that's an area that likes to crack and rust. So if you can get something in there later, or treat that, or get something to get that out of there, it might be worth it. All right, last thing, and I'll get off your case on this thing so we can get on to more stuff. Your motor mounts are not factory, and they're welded on. I'm going to show you what they should have been like, which are in on that one. So this has to be cut off. This was probably had an LS or a 350 in it, because that looks like homemade brackets for a 350, or at least close to it. Maybe not, but definitely not anything AMC wise. So now just take a good look at it so you can see, not super hard. It just, again, kind of all depends on how, excuse me, how we cut these off. We do have to cut them off unless you're going to be putting some sort of V8 into it. And then at that point, we can go from there. But it's not a hard job. We just, we can plasma it off. I mean, Jim can come in and grind it off, and you're not going to see it. We can touch it up, grind it down, clean it up the best we can, kind of thing. If you're going to be putting a different motor in this thing, you got to tell me now, because this is definitely the point that you're going to want setting things up for that. And we don't need to monkey with stuff like that if you are. So, but I don't think that's what we talked about. We'll just go. Okay, and then lastly, it's these guys. That's what you should have had on it. And so we have your front mount here. Okay, those are for your shocks. Here's your motor mounts are here, which is exactly, these are like factory, just like they should be. They're bolt on. So these going back on can just go back, bolt on, as long as you don't crack it all. I don't see anything. It should be okay. We'll clean them up and make sure. I don't remember seeing that mount. And of course, you have a sway bar. We want to get that back on there. So let's just take a quick peek on that. I remember seeing that one bracket on it, but maybe I just didn't see it. Yeah, they lopped it off. Okay, so that will be another area. Now, it almost looks like this frame just didn't have that. It's very possible that this is like a 76. Nope, I know it's not a 76 because the 76s weren't fully boxed. So they just did a good job. They just knocked off that bracket, but that bracket, and it looks like along with the sway bar stuff, we'll have to see what's left on that. They left that in, that should be too bad to do. This one we can just add back on. So essentially a bump stop. And that's it. I don't think there's anything else we should run into on it, but if there is, I'll do like I've done. Keep you informed on it and go from there. All right? All right, buddy. Thank you. And thanks for spending 40 minutes for whomever else is watching this, to give you kind of a idea of what's in store for you. And not always. A lot of people, and these don't have this kind of interior, so they're not doing a lot of savings. They're just buying tubs and frames from us and axles sometimes, and then a lot of it just gets tossed. But with this, and I think you can all agree, a Levi set of seats like this, pretty freaking sweet to have. He definitely lucked out with this guy in a lot of parts, even though there's some bad on it, there's some really good on it still too. So, and then we'll transfer over what we can. And as we pull stuff like this, I'll send you, maybe not video still, but we'll get photos. And the area we're gonna be looking at is gonna be the bottom of, well, it's actually the top of this piece. It folds over. And if this is real bad, like I think it might be, it's probably leached itself into this. There might not be anything left of this, but don't worry, because Brandon's been kicking butt out here, getting ready for this and that other one we're working on. And we have not all dashes, but we have some really nice, clean original, some not original, but most of them original factory dashes here. And matter of fact, we might even have, some of these are uncut. This one's a little modified, a little less modified here, but more modified here. So, a variety of things out here. Discounts for anything that does have a little bit of issues or even more issues, get more discounts, or to a point where I might even say get rid of it, and somebody wants, they can have it. Something like, this is a rare one, not for you, but for other customers, 72, 75s. That's probably what this guy's off of. That one's rare. I even have he's got a freaking great little radio. Can't believe he's got an original radio on that thing. So, okay, lots of stuff, guys. 7 acres, rust-free, Jeep parts. Okay, these kind of projects got to be real special to send us a Jeep, because we don't do this all the time. we got to kind of click where we kind of feel each other out, trust each other, and do this kind of work, because it's something we really do try to focus on our parts yard. This kind of stuff is a good distraction, but it's still a distraction. So it does take us a little bit longer to do it. And we actually brought on labor just to start doing these so we can get them done quicker. And hopefully we can keep them around. It'd be awesome. So gonna see this yard be 100% transformed here in the next 6 to 8 weeks. So stay tuned. And most of the videos will be more product based, but you know, it's always good to check in. This is kind of an update. So, all right. And if anybody's got some loader tires and needs some Jeep parts, you let me know, because I need some loader tires. I'll trade you out. Those things aren't cheap either, so. And those things go flat. They're a pain in the butt. I'm always filling the dang thing. Okay? I'm always willing to wheel and deal if it's something we need for equipment stuff, so keep that in mind for you guys out there that might wheel and deal in that trade, and maybe not in the Jeep parts. You let me leave me to that, so. Okay? Thank you. Have a great day.